Okay, so everybody keeps asking me, like, what's going on with Bryce, blah, blah. So, um, for those of you who don't know, um, it's been a long road. But anyways, when he, as far as school goes, when he started school a few years ago, he was having a hard time being there. He had a lot of excess energy, had a hard time concentrating, he would throw fits, when I would drop him off, he didn't want to stay, that sort of thing. So I started taking him to a psychiatrist to get evaluated because I've always just kind of felt like, something was a little different. I mean, even as a baby, I noticed that things were different. And he ended up diagnosing him with ADHD in combination with ASD, which is autism spectrum disorder. So, at the time, I mean, I always had kind of thought he was somewhere on the spectrum, so it was bittersweet. I was happy to have the diagnosis, but I was also upset because, I mean, who wants that for their child? But anyways, over time he eventually prescribed him Intuniv to help with his impulsivity, and then he added the Ritalin to help with his hyperactivity, and then eventually he ended up putting him on a Abilify because he started to have mood swings. I kind of feel like one medication made the other necessary. Like, for example, I think the Ritalin made him aggressive, which made it necessary for him to have the Abilify, which used in children with autism is supposed to help their irritability, and it's kind of like an antipsychotic, basically. So he went through school, and the behavior, it changed. It went from him just being kind of hyper and not really able to, like, get the attention, under control, to, as the years progressed, it turned into, just absolute, unhindered violence, I guess. I mean, I don't know if violence is the word. Fits, maybe, to where he, is hard to control within the classroom. He's screaming and agitated and, running out of the classroom, throwing things in the classroom, biting, hitting, pushing, and sort of without reason, without logic, like, where are the triggers, how can we avoid it, and there really wasn't any. As a matter of fact, he went through 4 teachers, and within the last program, when he was in Linden, he was in an EI classroom, which is an emotionally impaired classroom, basically for the kids that have behavioral issues. That's not his diagnosis on his IEP. They still have him umbrellaed under early childhood developmental delay, which is basically just a title that they can keep on children through the age of 7, basically saying that there's a problem. Obviously, clearly there's some sort of a problem. They're not ready to say what the problem is, because unfortunately his diagnosis of autism is through an outside source. It's through a psychiatrist. So he has a medical diagnosis of autism, but he doesn't fit the qualifications within the school system for him to be diagnosed as ASD. So unfortunately, that's not on his IEP. So up until this year, it was like a progression, like worse. I eventually switched him over to Livingston County Community Mental Health for his health services, just because it's through the state, so it kind of gets everybody on the same page, whereas before my psychiatrist was a private psychiatrist. When he went through the Livingston County Community Mental Health, which, let me just tell you, was like an extremely drawn out long process. Like, I think that by the time I had him in intake and by the time he finally started receiving services, it was like 4 or 5 months. Like, I feel like that's obnoxious. And then when he finally did start to get services, he had a therapist that would come to our home, and she didn't really work with him, like, a whole other, whatever. So anyways, eventually they decided to maybe try, since his behavior wasn't being reduced by the medications, they decided to go ahead and add a different medication, which has been used with children on the spectrum disorder to help, again, with, like, the anger and the mood swings, and she was going to counter taper, which basically means she was going to as she reduced the Abilify, she was going to, up the Risperdal until we got it to where it needed to be, and basically he took the Risperdal for 3 weeks and developed a movement disorder, so bye Risperdal, never again. I didn't really want to put him on it to begin with. The only reason I did was because his behavior was just like, and not for me at home, because within my home, for whatever reason, he's my son. Like, for the most part, I mean, with the exception of some days, I can for the most part keep him managed. So the medication was always, like, pushed upon me by everybody else. Like, he needs it, he can't be at school, he can't blah blah blah. The therapist, he needs it, blah blah. This is out of his control, whatever. So anyway, so they decided to go ahead after that then to just reduce the Abilify, because the adult dosage of Abilify is 30 milligrams, and at the age of 7, my son was already at 12. He would get 2 in the morning and 10 at night before he went to bed. And this was just obnoxiously high. So, and it really wasn't doing anything. So they decided to reduce him, so we got him reduced or whatever. Well, when we moved, I lost the services through Livingston County, because now I'm in Genesee County, and honestly, I just don't really want to resume services through Genesee County, because I just really am tired of seeing my son heavily medicated. Like, I really, like, it makes me sick to my stomach. I've never really been one for here, take a pill for this, here, take a pill for that. So to subject my son, when his brain is still developing, to drugs that alter his brain composition is not really for me. And if I thought that he was getting a benefit from therapy, then I definitely would continue to put him in therapy without the medication. But unfortunately, the therapy really has gotten, like, literally in 3 years, I don't think he's ever had, like, a successful session. Like, I've never left a session with him, or he's never left a session thinking, like, no. So anyways, so much. He was in the self-contained classroom at Linden, and they told me, that his behavior was becoming so, like, erratic, and they couldn't prevent it, and they couldn't see it coming, and he was a danger to other kids, and a danger to the adults in the classroom, a danger to himself, really, honestly, like, to be blunt. And so they said they were going to try to get him transferred into a day treatment program, which is basically like an intensive, there's a lot more support. It's a little bit more, shaped for children with behavior issues that Bryce has. So she said she was going to start, they said at Linden that they were going to go ahead and start that process, and that it could take a few months. So in the meantime, since they told me it was through Carmen Ainsworth, I wanted to move out towards that school district, just because I'm sure there's probably still going to be days where they need me to pick him up. And to be honest with you, I don't really feel comfortable with being a half-hour drive away from my son, especially because the way his needs are. So I went ahead and moved out here. I'm actually in the Atherton School District, and I kind of was like, I moved right before Christmas break, like a couple weeks before Christmas break, and I was just like, well, if it's going to take a few months for them to start this process, like, I'm not really in a big hurry to get him enrolled in Atherton, so, I just decided I was going to wait until after Christmas, and give them that extra time to get the ball rolling on getting him in the day treatment program, because I didn't want him to be at Atherton for that long. The day treatment program is through Genesee County, technically his school district, which was Linden, was Genesee County. So the day treatment program is still going to be the same. The only thing that's changing is his actual home school. So yeah, so I waited till after Christmas break, and I go in to get him enrolled at Atherton, and they basically tell me that they don't have the money, basically, that Linden School District has, so they don't have like a special classroom for children with behavioral problems, and they don't have the money for the support that he needs via parapro and stuff like that. So basically they stuck him in a standardized classroom. He's never been in a standardized classroom. He was in an actual kindergarten classroom one time, for which I initially spoke of in the beginning, in Linden. He went to kindergarten there for like 3 weeks before they decided that it just wasn't right for him. And then they moved him over to the Early Childhood Developmental Delay Program, which he was in all the way up until this school year, which he went back to Linden and, as I said, was placed in a self-contained classroom. So, great. So I go to have a meeting with them, and I basically tell them that there's no way that there's no way that that's going to work. Like, especially because in that self-contained classroom, even, it was only 7 kids in that class, and they had, the teacher and 3 aides. Whereas in this classroom, they have 28 kids, 1 teacher, and 2 parapros. The other 2 parapros are actually assigned to other kids in that class that have ASD. Apparently out here, ASD is pretty common. Bryce actually was one of very few in Linden School District with that diagnosis. So, but apparently it's a little bit more common out here. It makes sense since it's cheaper to live out here. The poverty level is a little high, and I'm going to go ahead and say, from a personal standpoint, if you have a child on the spectrum, it's really hard to maintain a job. Impossible, actually, because you got to figure. Especially now, Bryce is only at school for 3 hours a day. No one will watch him. He's been kicked out of daycares. So I imagine that the people who do have kids on the spectrum do have to live out here to survive, because it's sad. But anyways, so we had a meeting on Tuesday to discuss the plan, and the plan is that they're going to put him in this normal classroom until they can get it figured out. Apparently, first of all, the day treatment program that Linden spoke of, that they supposedly, were going to put him in, they obviously didn't, I guess they started putting a packet together, but apparently they didn't speak to anybody about it, because 2 reasons. Reason number 1, it's not in Carmen Ainsworth School District. It's actually in Atherton now, which is, cool for us because we're right here, but also, what? And then the second reason is you can't go into that treatment program without a label of emotionally impaired. And he doesn't have that label. And they could have given him that label because he meets the qualifications for that label. And also, they have, documentation from the past 3 years of his behavior to go ahead and give him that label without any kind of issue. So, Atherton can't do that now. I've transferred him there. They got the IEP from there. The IEP says early childhood developmental delay. So now what has to happen is he's going to get stuck in a normal classroom until they can figure it out. So they have 30 days to do a read assessment on him to evaluate what his diagnosis should be, what his label should be, to assess whether or not he's qualified for the day treatment program. So anyway, so that's a 30 days. They have 30 school days. So basically it works out to just shy of 2 months. And then that's just the first step for getting him into the day treatment program. They still have to put together a packet themselves of evidence and said things to get him into the program. So they told me that it could take up to 4 months. What? What? So he has to be in this normal classroom for 4 months. Okay, so he's been in that classroom for 2 days. He started yesterday, and today's Friday. Today was the 2nd day. Okay, yesterday he flipped over his desk, and the classroom had to be evacuated. And that was a calm day. That was calm for him. So today, apparently, they had to evacuate the classroom several times. They had to call down the social worker several times. They had to, basically deal with a lot today. And so when I got there to pick him up from school, the teacher was like exhausted. Exhausted. I walked in and I asked her how the day was, and she literally was like, awful. And I just told her, like, I tried to tell you guys, like, I don't know what else to do. I love my son, I love him to death, but I told them, like, this is not going to work. Like, him being in a class with her and 27 other kids and only 2 parapros, like, not going to work. It's not going to work. Like, I'm worried about the other kids. I'm worried about him. I'm worried about them. I'm worried about, in general, I'm worried. I'm scared. And I said that in the meeting, like, there is no possible way that that's going to work. Like, you have to do something. There has to be a way to expedite him, to put him in this day treatment program where people are trained to deal with him specifically. Like, you throwing him in a class full of 27 other kids and one teacher, it's not going to work. And they, basically said that, they've had to deal with similar cases in the past, and they were going to be able to handle it, and blah, blah, blah. And I just really wanted to grab them and be like, okay, those other kids that you dealt with in the past are not my kid. Like, not my kid. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's going to work. I said right in the meeting, I'm going to go on record and say, like, not to blame for what's about to happen. Not to blame. And that's what the teacher said today, too. She said, I'm worried about my other kids in the classroom. I'm worried about my aides. And I just looked right at her and I said, I tried to tell you. Like, I tried to tell you. And she's like, well, I heard you, but I don't think everybody else heard you. And I'm like, okay, well, that's the problem. Like, since he was a baby and I've been telling everybody that there's something amiss, be it whatever, he can't hear, he's not verbalizing correctly, his behavior is exaggerated, I don't think he understands his own emotions. Like, these sorts of things I have been saying since the child was since he was a year old, like a year and a half. Like, honestly, obviously within my initial group, I started to voice concern, like, Mom, I think there's something wrong with Bryce, blah, blah, blah. And then it reached out to doctors. I think there's something wrong with him. I don't think he can hear. Oh, his hearing's fine. His ears look fine. He's fine. Oh, okay, sure. He's fine. He's just 3 and he doesn't talk, but he's probably fine. And that was the other situation. I had to basically turn into a crazy person to get him to see an otolaryngologist because I wasn't trusting that he could hear. And guess what? He couldn't. Like, the day after his appointment, he was scheduled for immediate surgery. Like, immediate surgery. And now he's completely deaf in his right ear. And it can't be reversed. Like, that's for life. My son is now deaf in his right ear. Like, I just want to go on record and say that, like, I get that being a parent is hard. I get that. I never thought it was going to be easy. But I just don't understand how in society we have come so far and I still cannot get help for my child. That's where I'm at. It hurts my feelings to see my son suffer because that's what's happening. They're putting him in a situation that he can't succeed in that situation. He can't. For whatever reason, be it the ASD, be it whatever else, be it whatever. He can't succeed in that situation. And no one's doing anything to help him. Like, if Linden would have just done what they were supposed to do and labeled him properly and took the proper steps, then he could be in that day treatment program now. You know, the process could at least be started. We wouldn't be 4 months out. So, you know, now I have to listen to my son cry about how come he only gets to go to school for a half a day. Everybody gets to be there all day. He wants to be there all day. And he doesn't understand. And, you know, why is my desk away from everybody else? You know, he's not dumb. He understands that he's being isolated, and it's just not fair. It's not fair. And it's very lonely. Like, it's so lonely. I don't know. I wish that I had someone to share the heartache with. Like, I really do. And I get other people are going through it, and I get that. I get that. I get that other people can relate to me. I understand that. But he's my child. He's my child. And I had him with another person. Like, he has another parent. The only people that can heard about him the way that I heard about him is me and his father, and I don't have that. So, like, it's sad. It's very, very lonely. And I'm sorry to cry and look like an idiot, but I feel like people need to know. Like, people need to understand that it's hard. And the world is not fair. I mean, most of you, I'm sure, already know that the world is not fair, but it just makes me sick. It really does. It makes me sick. It makes me sick that for the next 4 months I have to send him into a situation that he is not going to succeed in, and that is only going to cause everybody heartache. Like, it's going to cause him heartache, it's going to cause me heartache, it's going to cause, the school heartache, it's going to... I mean, because the kids that he's in class with are going to see him behaving this way, and they're going to form their own judgments. And then, for however long he's in the school district dealing with those people, like, it's going to follow him around. And it's already hard enough for him. Like, life is already hard enough. So, like, why make it harder for him? Like, there's got to be a solution. I don't know. I just wanted to share that with everybody because everybody keeps asking me. My inbox is flooded with questions and everybody trying to reach out and give me support, and I appreciate that. I really do. Because it hasn't been easy, and I had Bryce when I was really young. So, and it's been hard. Because, I see grown people. I mean, I see educated people, successful people that are just torn apart and ravaged by, the stresses that come with having, an ASD child. And, I got to do it as a teenager, so, and I've got to do it alone. So, I mean, I wouldn't change him, and I really wouldn't. If I could take it away, I honestly wouldn't, because it makes him who he is, because he's so smart. Like, he's probably one of the smartest people that I've ever met. Like, he is so smart. Just genius status, and he's just trapped. Like, he just doesn't have the means to communicate. He doesn't have the means within himself to even translate his own emotions, so, his outbursts aren't just anger. I mean, there are tons of things. It just looks like anger. I mean, sadness, happiness, anything. Any emotion can come out as anger just because he doesn't know. He doesn't know how to translate them. He doesn't know how to communicate them. He doesn't know himself. So, I don't know. I just don't know, like, I don't know why everything has to be a fight, Like, I don't know why I had to fight so long with doctors. I don't know why I had to fight so long now with the school system, and, like, I'm tired of everybody just passing the buck on my child. It's not fair. It's not. So, but thanks for watching. For those of you who stayed through it, I appreciate it. So.